Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. Now, for everybody that's listening, 20 years ago, I picked up a book that changed my life, and it made me a better entrepreneur. It made me, I think, better able to focus in this crazy world that we're in. And just a few, I guess it was a few short months ago, I reached out. I posted something on Facebook, and my next guest replied, and I sent him some of my books, and we've been communicating back and forth, and so I want to introduce Les Hewitt to the podcast, and Les is the co-author of The Power of Focus, which has sold what close, I guess, over a million
It's over
copies,
a
and
million, something like that
yeah,
these
in
days.
what 21 languages, and
Mhm.
it's a fantastic book, and I recommend it. Everybody immediately, go to Amazon, get a copy, download the audio, download the book, whatever you got to do, but it's going to change your life too. So welcome, Les, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
You know, 20 years, that's a long time. So, I mean, how did you even meet Jack and Mark to collaborate on this book?
Well, really quick history. Came over from Northern Ireland originally, and 74 was a war zone,
Mhm.
and got to Canada. And I actually ended up working in a hospital in Canada as a lab tech.
Wow.
And I ran the hematology department and had 19 women to look after, which was so out of my comfort zone, you wouldn't believe. And I stuck that out for 6 years. I was totally in the wrong job. My worst subjects in high school, Rob, were math and science. I mean, just ridiculous. And finally, I met a man called Jim Rohn. You may have heard of Jim, but Jim was the master life changer for me. And he worked for a direct sales company that I got involved with. He was a trainer, and I did really well. Me and my wife. It was sort of a mini Amway thing that I really didn't know anything about at the time. But we ended up being the number one salespeople in the country. And Jim Rohn did listening to his old tapes, the old cassettes. I'd never heard anything like that. It was really basic stuff, but just life changing. And fast forward that, I started my own training company after I left the hospital. And Jim Rohn was one of my all time speakers that come in every year. And I ran the Achievers Canada seminar program for 12 years, brought in about 100, at least 100 of the top personal and business development experts in the world over 12 years. We had a little circuit. We went around 3 cities in Alberta here. And I had all these guys in the car. Like, I drove them to each city, and I had Zig Ziglar and all, all the top people. But Jim was the favorite, and that was like an MBA on steroids for me. And Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen separately were two of the speakers that I brought in more than once. I got to be good friends with them, and then I started my own coaching group, leadership program where we would work with executives and business owners. Did that for 12 years, and then I thought I should write a book. Um, and I had the content, like I had all the outline done. And the great thing about the coaching program that you probably know too, Rob, is you can really get results when you have a long-term program. The seminars were every month. It was a quick fix for people, but I could never track anything whether it was working or not. Um, but anyway, I showed the book outline to Jack and Mark, flew down to California to meet them, and they were in the middle of chicken soup. Like, chicken soup was just going crazy. Uh, and they actually said, we'd like to do a different book because we're up to our necks in chicken soup, So, and by then it was just running itself practically.
Yeah.
I think they've 230 titles now of chicken soup.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
crazy, but
sold 500 million copies.
yeah,
I mean, it's an absolute phenomenon. But they were in the middle of that, and they said, "We'd love to do a book that's not chicken soup." And I said, "I'll write the book. I got all the content, but if you guys can help me, I don't know how to get a publisher. they Jack got me a publisher in like 60 seconds. He
Wow.
just phoned HCI, who did all the chicken soup books, literally 60, and that's what I call leverage. And it was quite a clear strategy for me. I didn't know anything about books, and it was obvious to me, find somebody who's doing really well with books,
Mhm.
and if I can piggyback on that, and that's what happened. Really, their names really made a difference.
Yeah, I've communicated with Mark several times over the last 20 years, and I don't think he really knows who I am. It was just all,
Yeah.
you know, he encouraged me, hey, send me my chicken soup back and I'll autograph it. Okay, so I did that. He signed it, special message, sent it back to me. Um, Years later, it ended up in some garage sale, and because my wife didn't think it was of value. Oh, you know,
Well,
and,
apparently, when you put the date on it, it's even more valuable.
and I sign my books all the time, and it's like, do you really want my signature? Just,
You'd be surprised.
you
People
know.
do value that.
But yeah, the chicken soup phenomenon just it took off, and I think I was in Barnes and Noble the other day, and I was like, wow, chicken soup for this, chicken soup for that, and I was like, wow, you just throw all kinds of names to the back of
Yeah.
chicken
And,
soup.
and the thing that I learned from, I think it was Mark said, if we're going to do this book, let's do a series. He was really, and that's what chicken soup is really.
Right.
And so we've done, I think it's five, five different Power of Focus books.
Wow.
My wife wrote one, The Power of Focus for Women, became a big bestseller. The Power of Focus for college students, my son and his buddy did that one. And then we had a guy who was a minister in California. He sent me this email out of the blue, and he said, I've been reading your book. He said, and you may not know this, but it's really quite spiritual. So he ended up writing a Power of Faithful Focus
Wow.
right out of the blue, and then we did the 10th anniversary edition. That's the yellow cover. Um, and we've self-published a couple of our own books as well. The new one I'm just finished, actually. It's in the printers, called The Five Fundamentals. That'll be out in about a month, but we're self-publishing that. So I have a whole different cause behind doing that book. But yeah, I've learned quite a bit thanks to all the experts.
And with that leverage, you were able to get that book out there, and for me, it was when I launched in my books, uh, and I've
I really
written.
like your books, by the way. I love the way they're short, to the point, hit you right in the face.
Well, that was that
We
was
need more
the
of that. We need more of that style.
that was the goal in 2013 when I came out with my first book, which was called Share. It was all about social media,
Yeah.
and I shopped it around, and at the time, all the publishers wanted these thick technical books that were so boring.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going your route. This is my vision. I'm going to do it my way.
Good for
And
you.
so I created my own publishing company, and we self printed. And people say, it's not going to work. You're going to fail. And I just didn't listen to anybody. And
Good.
and I think the first month that Share was out, it sold 2,000 copies, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Great.
And I had an idea for a book on search engine optimization, which it sounds very technical,
Hmm.
but I partnered with a gentleman up in Winnipeg,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we wrote the book in 60 days, got it on Amazon, and it became a number one Amazon bestseller in four or
Great.
five countries, and it was that book, I think the second book, that kind of launched everything.
Yeah.
People said, Rob, help me with my book and do this and do that. And so I helped doctors with their books and lawyers with their books. And I said, I was never going to do a sequel. Um, but the thing is that people love sequels, and they'll continue to buy.
Yeah. Especially if the first book's good. And then it's got to be as good, if not better, than the first one.
And so when I launched, back here, I'm mirrored for some reason. When I launched the Rob versus series, the first one, Rob versus the Scammers, was just supposed to be, my take on me dealing sarcastically with the Visa Mastercard scammers, and
Right.
and then it turned into a whole series, and people get, Rob, keep going, keep writing, and then the second one was Rob versus the morons, and I think it triggered too many people because people were like, well, am I a moron? If you got to ask them, probably you are.
Yeah, well, it's you got to have something unique, obviously, that I mean catches the attention, and you hit a nerve. I think that's fantastic when you can do that. There's a lot of things that are not talked about on the media, but under the surface, it's boiling with people, and you've just triggered it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was, and I kind of channeled that sarcasm that, and I truly believe that over the last 20 months, people have lost all their sense of humor. We need to
Yeah,
bring it back. We need to get people laughing again.
exactly.
And I try to have that in my books, and these Rob versus series books are completely different than the educational books that I wrote,
Hmm.
prior. But it gives them the opportunity to laugh. It gives them a
Yeah.
very brief lesson, and then they can think about it.
Yeah, I have a little mastermind group that I started 35 years ago, and there's still three of the five originals. Um, and one of the guys, I don't know where he gets his sources from, but he sends me practically every day cartoons and little mini videos, and I mean, you laugh your head off, and exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's world's got so serious, so stressful, so politically correct. I'm 100% with you and all of that. Uh, but it's not that difficult, but he doesn't realize the service he's doing,
Yeah,
that just, and it goes out all over the place.
right.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I had cartoons in the first book and the second book, and I think you have to entertain people when they're reading,
yeah,
and it can't be all serious. It depends on the topic, obviously, but you can still get some. And I think it's your personality that has to stand out, which you do brilliantly. I mean, it's your personality is so raw,
yeah. And
which I think people really enjoy. Well, I coach business owners primarily, and often they'll tell me, push me harder. I want to be challenged. I don't want to be just coasting along and saying you're really good, but I want the truth. And if it's hard truth, I want to know what it is. And that's the sort of client I like to work with.
right. Yeah, I find that the clients that I take on that are very wishy-washy don't last very long because
No,
they don't understand, one, my sarcasm, or they don't think that I'm being truthful to them. And it's like, I don't want to give you a lie or sugarcoat
yeah.
it. This is what it is. And
Well, your honesty comes right through, like, and that's a really good thing. Uh, and it is honesty. It's not ego or anything else that I see, anyway.
but your book, the Power of Focus, I think was paramount to helping entrepreneurs everywhere. But it came out at the time that the internet was also exploding,
Exactly.
and so now our focus is kind of off the things that we truly want, and now we're glued to the computer or the internet or now our phones, and
Yeah,
I think we're more distracted than ever.
absolutely. You just watch kids, any group of kids walking down the street, they're all looking at their phones. And yeah, I spoke in, I think it was Dubai years ago, and I was just walking into one of the big malls, and there was a bench with six local kids. I took a photograph of it, and they're all like this. There's nobody talking. They're all into the phones. And it's sad, I think, because the researchers are telling us, especially with younger kids, it becomes addictive. Like it's actually been in the British Medical Journal. There was a big article years ago saying this is not an addiction for some kids, especially with texting. It's just got out of control, basically. So
Yeah,
anyway, those are things that's worth talking about today.
there's a school right in back of us, and I think even the kindergartners, the kids that go to kindergarten, they even have phones now. And it's
Yeah,
like,
so it's ridiculous.
yeah, it's on, I think the kids don't need that technology until they're older,
Yeah.
until they learn how to focus on the important things in life. And
Well, when I was running around the streets of Belfast, uh, I mean, we had nothing. You just you used your imagination. You made up games that you played with your friends and all sorts of things. But it was your imagination that was allowed to expand, and I think that's all getting shut down right now.
yeah.
Just which is not good.
So let's go back. I mean, and I do want to congratulate you. You've been married what, 37, 38 years?
45 this Saturday.
45. Wow.
This
My wife,
Saturday.
my wife and I just celebrated 32. So,
Good for you.
and that takes a commitment. And
Absolutely.
you know, as that commitment, we have to have that balance between the marriage and also the business that we're growing.
Yeah.
And for me, that was very hard because, you know, I had a couple business failures at the very beginning of our marriage. And it was in 1995. I created a carpet cleaning business and had that for 20 years. But I started the coaching business in 2000. And I kind of put it on hiatus right after 9/11 because,
Hmm.
the world was in shock.
Yeah.
And it was very kind of hard to get that coaching business back, you know, together
Hmm.
um, after that. So the coaching business I did, one or two coaching jobs a year for many, many years up until I think 2010. And then I said, yeah, that's it. It's either continue with the carpet cleaning business or do the coaching.
Mm.
And I had created a concept to write this first book in 2012. And I had, stacks and stacks of ideas, and I took it up to the mountains, and we had this, I went to the family cabin, and I was gonna, you know, put all these ideas in order, and I'm like, no, this isn't working. And I took the whole box and threw it in the fire pit and set it on fire. And my wife's like, "What are you doing? Those are all your brilliant ideas." I said, "Yeah, but they're terrible." So, and a few months later, I coming home from a plane trip, I came up with the idea to write the simplest social media book ever, and that's what kind of started the whole career. And
Yeah.
so I think
Well, keeping
sometimes,
it simple is a big part of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, but yeah, I look at a lot of entrepreneurs who've been married all these years, and I
Mm.
have to congratulate them because it's tough.
Yeah.
Um,
There's one thing in the new book. I've worked with this for years. Yeah, I was speaking at an HR conference and about 150 execs there, and people asked me a few questions afterwards, and there was a lady standing just sort of waiting until she could have her turn, basically. And she asked me a question, and it was interesting. Nobody had that I remember asked me that question. She said, "How do you create excellent long-term relationships?" And that got me thinking. And the way she said it sounded probably this was a personal thing. And I didn't go into that with her, but I give her a couple of thoughts. But I thought about that later, and reflecting on my marriage and some other people I know have done well. And I call it the 5 C's. And you said the first one, commitment.
mhm.
I think some people today, unfortunately, they get married, and it's like they sign the registry in pencil because it's easy to erase.
Mm.
The first little bump comes along, and they can't handle it.
Yeah,
And you and I know, if you've been around that long, it just doesn't work. And
yeah,
so, commitment is: are you all in? And if you're having trouble in the marriage, which everybody has their ups and downs, no different with me, my wife Fran. Uh, but at the end of the day, the bottom line question is, do you want this relationship to work? And it's a yes or no. And that's it. If you want it to work, then figure out what the work is and roll up your sleeves and do it.
yeah,
So commitment's huge. Second one is communication. And once that goes sideways, yeah, and this is for the men. You know, you just got to pay far more attention. If you haven't read Venus and Mars, you better read it because we are different from women and vice versa. So communication is big. The third C is compromise, and you won't win all the battles. I'm sure you've realized that by now, Rob. But
I don't win any.
you 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 gotta not let your ego get in the way or want to control everything.
Yeah.
Not going to work. The other one is consistency. I think you develop trust and reliability when things are consistent. And the last one is caring, and that's, of course, keeping the love in the marriage and everything else, doing your bit, sharing and caring. And the big one you want to avoid at all times, which is a sixth C, is complacency.
Mm-hmm.
If you let any relationship to become complacent, you're in big trouble, and especially marriage.
Yeah.
So I've found those five plus the complacency one. It's a pretty good foundation for checking in to see where you're at. And if you do get stuck, pretty sure that all you got to do is check those five, and if you're prepared to work at it, you'll be able to turn things around.
And all those C's can be applied to being an entrepreneur,
Oh, absolutely.
dealing with
Any important relationship.
yeah, your client relationship. What I find, yesterday I was actually doing live chat with one of the mobile
I
phone
saw that.
companies.
Yeah,
And to me, that is not helping your client at all.
you're right.
And I think a lot of these companies is just say, well, we're just going to do live chat, or we're just going to do this. We're going to take the human element out of it.
Yeah.
Well, now you've diminished that trust, and
Especially when the tech doesn't work. I
right.
mean, I've got a good friend in St. Louis, Mike Weinberg. I read his book. Somebody gave it to me at a conference or something. I never opened it for 3 months, but it's the best sales book I've ever read. It's called New Sales Simplified. And he's like you. He calls it the blunt truth. And he just goes right to the heart. New Sales Simplified, Mike Weinberg. And he's got 3 books out. They all hit #1 on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
But he tells it the way it is, but you're absolutely right. If you're trying to make technology, and he made a big case for this, he said the biggest mistake salespeople are doing at the moment, and sales managers, they're thinking like technology is going to bring in all the new sales. I've got a 1-hour keynote coming up in Russia in October, and it's all about marketing. And I sent the person that was interested in hiring me. Here's what I think about marketing and sales. First of all, if it's tech you think is going to solve everything, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get back to basic relationship building and creating all the rapport and all the stuff that goes on with that, and then have something really useful that you're selling, a product or a service, and then give them the best customer service personally that you've ever given in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You can use tech obviously to support that, but if you're looking at the takeover, forget it. And that's what Mike's all about. He, in that first book, he slaughtered the salespeople and the managers about sitting with their CRMs trying to figure out the best software. Managers would never go out on a call with a salesperson and expect big results. It's nuts.
And even though I teach social media and help clients with SEO and web building, I find sometimes technology is too much. I think that we need to go back to learning our phone skills, to visiting people, to handshakes, to storytelling, and meeting people for lunch.
Exactly.
But it's and I think the idea of the laptop lifestyle has kind of depleted that trust. And it was a goal that I had for a long time, because I had that local carpet cleaning business. All my clients were local.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started to be the coach, to be that guy, to travel and take my laptop everywhere, I didn't have a local base anymore. all my clients are all over the world. And so, now I can walk around my town anonymously. Nobody knows who I am, which is great.
Yeah.
But I go to Dallas, I go to San Diego, like people are like, "Hey, Rob," and I'm like, "Really?" Well, and for you, I mean, you're traveling all over the world, and people know you, and you got that celebrityism, and to me,
I'm quite under the radar, Rob. I'm
I,
not that celebrity you think.
I
Unlike
couldn't,
you, I don't want to have hordes of people all over the place. That's
I
stressful.
yeah, to me, I couldn't get into that. I'm like, you can read my books, you can buy my stuff, and you can hire me to speak and coach, but I don't want, I don't want any of that celebrityism.
Well, it's interesting, I find the number of speakers I've, had connection with in the industry. A lot of them are off the platform, really quite introverted.
Mm,
And of course, and you get on the stage, you got to have some personality.
yeah.
But it's interesting. And then there's some that are just all over the map, on the stage, off the stage. But it's an interesting group of people. But they certainly were the giants that I had to sort of stand on their shoulders as I was learning. And I think as you get more experienced in business or in life, it's almost a requirement, I think, to pay it forward, to pass it on, to the younger ones that are coming up. I'm so excited right now. My big project at the moment is helping marginalized teens. A lot of these kids are from overseas that they've left bomb blasted countries and disaster areas, and they arrive. They can't speak a word of English.
Yeah.
And these kids are amazing, how the tenacity they have, and their parents.
Mhm.
And so I'm a big soccer fan. And so I met this guy from Rwanda, and he had started this little Saturday soccer thing in the local park. And I went along just to check what it was. I ended up coaching the 14 to 19-year-olds
Wow.
in soccer. And then I thought, I wonder if these kids would be interested in any of the personal development stuff that I've been around for years and years. So I started a little bit with them, and there was a definite interest. I took 11 of them, and for 6 months, we spent every Sunday night 2.5 hours in a little tiny office. Uh, and these guys were so hungry to learn, like absolutely amazing. And they're all doing great in school. They'll all pass high school, get their diplomas. I think in that group there's about 10 are in the university, and the kids are great. So I just go along every Saturday for a couple of hours, and then we started a 5-day camp. That's my big thing going forward. We want to have these camps all over the country,
Wow.
and we teach them those 5 fundamentals basically, which is the new book.
Mm.
And if they just get a hold of those life skills, and we're going to have an online resource for them as well. I'll get a lot of my buddies to share their best stuff, and they can go in and access that anytime they want. So,
Wow.
so that's where my energy is, and it's very exciting.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, you do coaching, you do speaking, you do all these different courses and seminars. What do you feel more passionate about? I mean, is it helping kids? Is it soccer? Is it the
Well, I think life obviously is like a book. You've a whole bunch of chapters, and I mean it's interesting for me. I was in the medical world for 14 years. Probably procrastinated 3 years before I quit. And then I had 12 years running the seminar program. Then I had 12 years doing the group leadership coaching. And then I started the books. Um, and then I really enjoy the one-on-one with the business owners now, and just a handful of them. But a few years ago, I turned 70, and I thought, okay, what's the next chapter? And I asked myself 2 questions, Rob. What are the 2 things I'm most passionate about?
Mhm.
And coaching came up right away, and soccer. And I thought, well, how could I ever merge those 2 things, right? So the story I just told you, I just met this guy literally a couple of weeks after I asked that question. There's no accidents.
Right.
And that whole thing just exploded. And we got really big vision for this. Like, we want 50,000 kids through the camps in the next few years. I'm looking to partner with one of the biggest organizations in the world that can blow this out right across the world. Uh, and just working with these kids is such a pleasure and a privilege, and I still enjoy working with, a handful of business owners one-on-one. I've always enjoyed that. So,
And I find it fascinating because I just turned 52, and I ask the same questions all the time. What is my passion? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Is writing books or doing coaching or doing what's my purpose? And
yeah,
I want to do more small, intimate, coaching programs where just 25 to 40 people show up, and that's where I shine. I don't
yeah,
like a whole room full of people I don't know. I don't
yeah.
it's not,
Well,
probably.
that's exactly what I did. I mean, the small group coaching is so effective,
Yeah,
and compared to the seminars, it was day and night.
right.
So I put a 2-year curriculum together, and we had 25 to 30 people, and they committed for 2 years. And we spent a whole day every 2 months. So we did 6 days a year. So like 12 full days over the 2 years. But the greatest thing about that was, first, you got to know the people really, really well.
Mhm.
And the other thing, you could measure the results and the impact.
Right.
Uh, and what I learned from them was at least as much as what I was giving them. I mean, that was the fun of it for me,
Oh,
just all the different types of businesses these people were in. And it was just a fantastic learning curve.
well, that's why I do these podcasts. I mean, it's not just for the benefit of the listeners, but I gain so much knowledge interviewing everybody. And
Absolutely.
I've done about 150 of these. And before this podcast, I had another podcast many years ago where I interviewed some brilliant people, and so it I may stumble on my words, I might stutter. To me it becomes more real, more raw, more emotional, and the audience loves it,
Yeah.
because it's
And
not perfect.
I think it's authentic. It's just being authentic,
Yeah.
and one of the things I learned about being a speaker is, um, if you're open to be vulnerable on the stage, and tell the audience the things that didn't work, where you made the stupidest mistakes, what you learned from it, and some of them will be funny, and the audience, I think, identifies with that more than anything else. It's the guy that comes on, or the woman that comes on, is 100% perfect about everything and knows everything. I mean, I've seen audiences go to sleep, because it doesn't resonate with them.
After my first book came out, I had to speak in Vegas, and I had just spoke local like 2 days before, and people loved it. So I get to Vegas, and the person who spoke before me was just pitch perfect. I mean, it was just suit and tie, and people clapped, and then I get up, and I was told you got to stand behind the podium. Well, high school I never liked podiums, so that was my first mistake. I should have just stood off to the side. So I get behind this podium, and I just froze.
Yeah,
And
it's a barrier.
you know, I I'm thinking to myself internally, I've given 100 speeches. What the hell's going on? And I just froze, and I started stuttering, and people were like looking at me like, "Get off the stage!" And I said, "Excuse me, hang on." I pulled my notes out of my pocket, read them verbatim, and I apologized to everybody, and they stood up and clapped. And I'm like, "All right, that was just weird."
And get rid of the podium.
Get rid of and I said, "I hate podiums." And
No, I have a table, but not a podium.
so when I go into places now, I'm like, "Nope, get away from the podium." Nope. And I share that story a lot because a lot of people have that sense, that
Yeah.
fear of speaking. and there's always one thing in that room that's going to paralyze them.
Absolutely.
If they can get over that right away,
Mhm.
and so now I tell stories, I crack jokes, and sometimes I teach a little lesson, but most of the times it's just sharing a story because that's what
Yeah.
makes
Well, the stories are so powerful. I mean, that's why Chicken Soup has done so well. And I don't know if you know the backstory to that, Rob, but Jack and Mark, when they wrote the first Chicken Soup book, they showed it to 143 publishers, and they all rejected it.
wow.
143. And the 144th was Health Communications down in Florida, and it was a little company. And the guy that owns it, he said, "I'll take a chance on you, but here's the deal: you've got to sell 20,000 copies." And I mean, that was music to their ears. They're great marketers, they're great salespeople. They knocked off the 20,000, and HCI became rich.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to take that
And it took
opportunity.
14 months to get into the bestseller list with that first book.
Wow, that's just crazy.
But 143 publishers all shaking their heads today saying, like, how did we miss this?
Yeah,
Because they didn't take time to get to know Jack and Mark.
right.
And if they had done that, they would have seen the passion, the drive, the commitment that making this book work. If they had to work 18-hour days or whatever, they would have done it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
nobody, they just looked at the book and went, no, we're not interested in that. Nobody will read those little stories.
yeah. And that was the same. I got that same feedback from the Rob versus the Scammers book, because I was just all I was doing is sharing these episodes, these little chapters out on Facebook,
Yeah, it's great.
and people were like, you ought to, Rob, you've already written books. Why don't you just assemble these stories? And I'm like, okay. So I put the manuscript together, shared it with a few friends, and one who I really respect says, Rob, it's not a book, it's just a collection of stories. And I'm like,
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
what works.
exactly.
That's what works.
And
But the other thing is, and we all have a voice,
yeah,
and your voice, your natural voice, really comes through in the way you tell the stories and the way you put everything together. That's what makes it unique. And the other thing I learned years ago, somebody told me that they said every book, whether it's business, personal development, novel, or whatever it is, um, it's the compilation of information. It's where you go to find the stories. You pull something over here, something over here. You got a couple of your own, and you put this whole big thing together into one thing, and it's unique because nobody else is going to do it the way you do.
right.
And it's that combination of all these bits and pieces that come together in a certain way. And there's other people, you probably know, there's like thousands of personal development books written every year.
Yeah,
Very, very, very few of them hit bestseller or anywhere close to it. The
right.
publisher told me that their deal with any author, particularly new authors, would if they could sell 15,000, they'd break even.
Yeah,
But anything under 15,000 was, yeah, they'd lose money.
wow, it's crazy.
And if people don't sell 1,500, never mind 15,000.
And that's
Uh,
why I self-publish, because for me, as I can sell my books to the people who really want them. If they want to go to Amazon and get them, they can.
sure.
I'm not into this. I mean, yeah, it's easy to get Amazon bestseller. It's not easy to get New York bestseller. You've done it.
Yeah, but it's still a bestseller. I mean, Canada, if you write a book in Canada, you sell 5,000, it's a bestseller.
yeah,
You need 50,000 or 60,000 in the States, but
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's usually I hit Canada's list faster than the U.S. list, and but Great Britain's list is a little tricky. I think I hit it once or twice, and I hit it once or twice in Japan, and like that was just kind of random because you know
Great.
it's all in English. I don't translate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got them all in different languages, and they change the covers, so I
Yeah.
have no control over that. But it's fascinating to see, books written in Arabic and
Oh yeah.
Hebrew and Japanese.
I think that's one of the most exciting things about writing books is because
Mm.
once it's picked up by different authors in different countries, or and different publishers now,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
it just
the greatest thing today about technology, whether it's Zoom or anything else, is you have a global reach like we've never had before.
yeah,
I mean, you really literally have a global audience if you want it, and that's incredible when you think
yeah,
about it.
and I mean that's what I did. I mean, I took my local audience to a global scale,
Hmm.
and not many people can do that.
Hmm.
I think your book was very tremendous in helping me do that,
Oh, thank you.
and I owe you a debt of gratitude, and I think that anybody listening, please go grab The Power of Focus, and go to Les's website, which is
Just leshewitt.com.
okay.
Keep
and
it
what
simple.
and what can they do when they're there? Can they download something? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little free sort of survey thing that I did about the 10 biggest reasons people lose focus, which has got value in it.
Mhm.
I haven't been a big product guy. Like I created a little USB card years ago, which has become really popular. It's like 97 bucks and there's 19 hours of audio on it.
Wow.
Um, I think the whole, yeah, I'm not sure if the first book's on it, but yeah, I've got workshops on it and yeah, 19 hours of audio. But yeah, but that's about it. And in the books, you can buy them anywhere, you know. So yeah, I'm like you probably. And if it's on Amazon or it's in your bookstore, fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I've done things where people want to order, 100 or 500 books or something, and I just phone the publisher and tell them
Yeah.
to send them out to them.
Yeah.
But the new book, I'm excited about the five fundamentals. It's called Essential Skills for Building a Meaningful, Prosperous Life. And those are awareness, focus, again, obviously, relationships, routines, and resourcefulness. And I find, just going back, I've been doing this for nearly 40 years. So, again, compiling what I've seen work best for people. If I had to pick, what I asked myself was, if I only had five topics, which ones would they be?
Mhm.
And I really thought a lot about that, and but that's the five that came up, and those are the five that we're teaching these kids, and it's working with them. So, as I said, that's really exciting for me to.
And with the kids now, you have a case study. I mean,
Yeah,
they're learning as they're progressing, and it's they can be featured in future books if you needed them to be.
yeah, and the testimonials are fantastic. I mean, there's a couple of these kids are like a lot of them play on local teams, but there's one young boy from Colombia who we met when his mother was forced to leave Colombia because the terrorists back then at the time were trying to kidnap her son.
Wow.
And he was only 12. And they were going to march him off into the jungle. And she just said, no way, screamed and yelled. That night she left, uh, walked practically to the Venezuelan border with the whole family. Her husband was in a wheelchair and she had a daughter who had Ray's syndrome, which is a brain disorder. And I mean, this story is it's in the I think I start the second part of Focus, the yellow cover one. That's the story I start with.
Wow.
And so we met these people when they first arrived in Canada. That was about 11 years ago. And the two boys now they've both been through the camp. Um, One is a really good soccer player. In fact, there's a team in England, a Premier League team called West Ham United, and he was invited to go over there for a soccer camp. And I went with him because he'd never flown on a plane before, except for the first time he came up here. And it was a lot of fun. And he's good. Like this kid's like he has got potential. I'm trying to get him to get a college scholarship in soccer,
Mm.
uh, possibly in the States or in Canada. And he has the ability to do that. But to see these kids like just mushroom, when you give them some decent information and they implement it and then they come back. I said, one of the things I tell these kids is um, Do you have a savings account for your money? No. Okay, that's your first exercise. Get your parent, go down to the bank, get a savings account, start it. I don't mean to keep your money in the bank all the time, but that's how you can start.
Yeah.
And every dollar you make, you put 10 cents in there. Every $100 you make, you put $10 in there. This kid, the other brother in this family, he's a great guy, work ethic, goes to the gym 6 times a week. Uh, I asked him about 6 months after he went through the camp, and I really hammer this with the kids: do something sensible with your money and stop wasting it. He had 15,000 put away.
Wow.
Just about dropped. I was thinking of me when I was that age. I don't think I even knew what a savings account was back then. Like 15 grand he's got in the bank.
Yeah.
He bought his own car just recently. Cash.
It's amazing. And you know, everybody, this is what makes Les an e-hero, because he's constantly not only improving, he's helping entrepreneurs, he's helping kids, he's changing the world. So with that, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode and chat with you guys later.